Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Path. It's Dara here with you today, and I am joined by my boon companions, Michael and Jay. Last time these two were on the channel, we talked a lot about the Death Guard and the Thousand Suns, as their indexes had just dropped, and we were speculating on how they might do. Obviously, a lot has changed since then. We've just had a Balance Dataslate, so I thought it's a perfect time to revisit the cult factions and address them in the wake of the Balanced Dataslate. So before we kick into it, I just want to kind of broach the topic of the Balanced Dataslate in general, how the meta has shifted overall and how we're feeling. So let's start with Mike. Mike, how are you feeling about the changes from the Balanced Dataslate? Not necessarily Thousand Suns, take them away from a minute, but just overall, how are you feeling about the changed meta as you see it?
Yeah, how are we doing? I'm good. Jesus, yeah, they needed to do something, didn't they? And they kind of went in style. They kind of took a hatchet to half the bloody rules, really, didn't they?
I'm so surprised. Like, we saw core rule changes, which I think the three of us were like, that ain't happening.
My one disappointment from the whole thing is they didn't take Fight First out of its misery. It's still there. It's harder to get to, but it's still there.
Harder to get.
Well, for Custodes anyway. I don't know. The rest of us, we still have to deal with it. But no, Jesus, good. Yeah, by all means, they definitely had a crack at doing it. I think they could have stood with doing this 6 weeks earlier, but yeah, it's certainly worth commending them for their effort in actually trying to fix the game. Because I was very worried. Was it the start of 9th where they did like a data slate, one of the first ones where they still wanted to print them, and because it took so long to go to print, Death Guard at the time had been powerful, and then like 4 months later they weren't. Yeah, Death Guard. Yeah, they had a hard time for a while.
We were already on the way down, and all the updates were in those mission tournament packs, and it was like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was terrible. When it was like the Minotaurum pack, and it was just like, yeah, these changes like mattered 3 months ago, but don't matter now. At least it's a little bit more reactive at the minute, I guess, right?
It's more on topic, certainly. They're definitely after hitting. I can't say I agree with everything they've done, but Jesus, they're after doing, like fairly comprehensive. Most factions got something. Like I played, actually all three of us played an RTT in Cork a couple of months ago now at this stage after the edition launched, and it was a 1500 point RTT. Like my list and that for my Blood Angels dropped by 300 points. Like, so they really went at it. They really went at it. So yeah, give them their due where they deserve it. They're definitely after making a go of it. I would hope that if this doesn't work out, I think it's going to take probably 6 weeks for this to really properly settle down. But that they're not going to leave it like we got this one a little early. I think technically it's like 3 weeks early, the data slate this time compared to what they were saying like the end of September. That they're not going to leave it till the start of January before they say, oh, geez, maybe we did get that wrong, but we'll come back and have another look at it. That they come back in the meantime if something is way out of whack and say, right, we're going to do something about this. I hope.
Yeah. My worry is that like the dominance of Eldar won't really change. Not enough. It'll change a little bit, but I don't think it will change in like a really meaningful top tier sense. Like we'll say your average mid-tables Eldar player who is just kind of rocking up with like just about having grown a brainstem and like dominating, going 4-1, they probably won't be able to do that anymore. They're probably going to have like at least a smoothened dome on top of the brainstem, I would say. But like even despite that,
that love for the elder players.
I know, right? I mean, in a non-scathing sense, I think they are still going to be very, very dominant. It's just like a slight pivot.
Maybe like instead of 70%, it's not going to be 60% win rate.
Nice round at 69. If you just
very much for the top.
Yeah, it's going to be high 50s, low 60s, 100%, I think. But like, it's just going to be okay, cool. So you brought 20 Wraith Guard instead of a Wraith Knight and 10 Wraith Guard, or like, I see you've turned up with 30 Wind Riders. Phenomenal. Revolutionary.
Back by me.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you think about it though, like what they've done before the patch, right? So the problems were everyone thought Elder was a problem. Everyone thought Gene Stealers were a problem. Custodes Melee were a problem. Space Marine Direct was a problem. Like what else? There was a list of issues that we said this has to like thousand suns, I suppose, probably towering.
Yeah.
There was the one that they didn't really touch. I suppose it'd be Necrons, but other than that, they're kind of after going through the greatest hits of 10th edition so far and say, well, we're going to change this, Like the squad size changes for Custodes, fantastic.
I just think that like in terms of Eldar, Custodes, and Imperial Knights, there's like very much disproportionate nerfing going on there.
Mm.
Like Custodes and Knights got nerfed as hard as I would have wanted Eldar to get nerfed, you know?
Yeah.
Custode players are going to hardcore abandon their faction now. Like all of them have always loved Death Guard, have always loved the models, and can't wait to get them on the table 100%, right?
Yeah,
That's the way I see it.
I, for one, welcome my new stinky overlord. That's going to be great.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I look, to be honest with you, there is, like I said, the kind of the greatest hits of 10th so far. They're going through it and kind of making adjustments for a lot of it. So,
Yeah.
like Eldar, they're going to pivot to, is it the Night Spinner or something, for example, is like
Probably,
a very
yeah.
powerful unit. Like, there's still a lot of really good stuff inside that. The Avatar, fantastic. Incarn, yeah, it's expensive, but Jesus Christ, like it pops up in your backfield. What do you do? It's T whatever and halves damage.
At
And
least you can't phantasm it anymore, thankfully.
Yeah.
well,
That's terrifying. But yeah,
find
I
a
think
way,
it's,
don't
like,
worry.
enough has changed to like go kind of chaos mode for a little bit. Probably for long enough to maybe we might have like 4 weeks before the next balance patch when things have kind of settled down. But I don't really see things settling down for a long time because we'll have codexes dripping out in the meantime as well. But Jay, what about you? How are you feeling about the slate overall, I guess?
Yeah, like I mean, I think I personally I thought it was going to be like just points this time. I was really, really skeptical of it being any sort of change to rules at all this time. I thought they were just going to be really heavy-handed points things this time, but they've really kind of just. I think now whatever they'll do in 3 months, that'll just be points, and then whatever they do 3 months after that, that'll be rules. Then I think they said that they were going to alternate that before, but
Yeah, I think you're
yeah,
correct
really
there,
happy
yeah.
that they've decided to really go in, because I think even we were saying some of the wording on some of the articles made it sound like it was just going to be points, and then maybe it was going to be rules. So yeah, really happy that they did, and I think it's really shooken up the top 3 factions for sure. I think even maybe went a little bit too hard on the towering. This is coming from someone who is like constantly sweating about running into knights all the time, like, and I'm like, oh, actually, so poor knights. But especially chaos knights, they didn't need this debuff
yeah, they did
at
nothing
all.
wrong.
It's an
nothing
indirect
wrong.
buff. It's an indirect buff, I will remind you, though. They can hide behind buildings now as well.
Melee,
Jesus,
you'll
I
see a
don't
lot
know.
of they'll all switch over to melee knights now. The melee knights are going to be a lot better now. But melee knights in a shooting edition, it's still
Yeah.
For sure.
But no,
Yeah, it's
I'm
an
quite happy
interesting.
with a lot of changes. Obviously, I think, especially since the last time I was like trying to be a ray of hope for the Death Guard. So I think I'm happy with a lot of the changes, even in like how it affects us in like our opponents and how they have all been changed. I think that's actually, even without the changes to Death Guard alone, I think a lot of like of the weaker factions will be like, okay, cool, we might be able to at least give a bit of a tussle now. Come on.
I mean, I would say like some of the ones that were like in the gutter, so to speak. Tau. Tau's a skill issue, to be honest. Like, Tau was already fine. It was just like Tau players weren't getting their hands held, but like they used to be in 9th edition. Like,
I wasn't told this was going to be a hot take. So.
oh no, it's for real. This is going to be the spice, right? But like Tau are going to be so dominant now, in my opinion. It's crazy. I saw even Tau players complaining about how much their point reductions have like affected them. Like, people are like, I used to get like 6 crisis suits before, and now I can get like, what was it? I saw someone saying their list went from having 6 crisis suits to having 15, which is like, okay,
impressive.
That's going to definitely be fine, right?
And they're tough bodies.
Sorry?
They're tough bodies. They're
Yeah.
pretty tough bodies, like especially with like a shield drone each as well, fast and tough.
Yeah, they're kind of weirdly like not fast anymore though, because they can't go through walls, which is pretty funny.
Right.
They're
Vehicles, are they?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay.
Everything that
Still.
isn't a stealth suit is basically a vehicle.
Yeah.
So watch out for
Tower
that.
players.
Yeah.
Poor tower players.
They're going to be good though. Orcs are going to be good. Krons, But I actually like for real think the biggest win percentage shift is going to be Death Guard. I think Death Guard are poised to like properly gatekeep the upper echelons of the competitive tables.
Anybody tried to run melee at all, like if you run into the wrong Death Guard build,
Yep.
so
I'm out.
good night. If you're running into the wrong Death Guard build and you've been preparing to play melee, like they're gonna have their way with you.
Oh yeah. I'm like terrified for how much my win percentage in our casual friendly games is going to take a hit once I start playing against you again.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be super rough, but I'm here for it. I'm ready to mess with the absolute abuse that you put on the table across from me. So yeah, I suppose let's pivot a little bit into the crux of the video, which is what we have here is Thousand Suns, Death Guard, and World Eaters, the 3 cults armies, the cult Chaos Space Marine armies, which have all changed considerably. For anyone who's watching, the World Leader stuff, I'll have talked about it kind of in depth on live stream and on a video, which should be out by now on the channel. Obviously, we've had pretty sweeping reductions in terms of points, but I think it's actually pretty cool because if you look across kind of the spectrum that we have here, we have like Thousand Suns with the nerfs. We've got World Leaders somewhere in the middle with a kind of a boost. And then we have Deck Guard on the opposite end, which is like, we're going straight into
Triple
the sun.
sevens on the casino machine. Let's go.
It's the jackpot,
We ain't ever
baby.
coming home.
Yeah.
No.
100%. I will say though, like my knowledge of really how the Thousand Suns has changed is not good. I haven't really paid attention to them because I've just been sweating about Deck Guard. So Mike, why don't you enlighten me? What has happened to the Thousand Suns? How have they changed, and how does it affect you?
I think the last time we had one of these, I was optimistic. Relatively optimistic about how well Thousand Suns would do. I was kind of a bit cagey because, of course, we didn't know what way they were priced. The abilities looked fantastic, but the price, well, when we were talking about it, we didn't know. Since we found out about that, Thousand Suns have been, I won't say cheap, but they've been very strong for their price. I mean, the units are effective.
I think 95 for rubrics, I would say, was cheap for what they did.
What, 2 shots in a bolter?
Oh, come on. You've got the flavors.
But then they were like vessels for all that psychic power, like
Yeah.
a big card you could attack for nearly the pinnacle. You needed to pay that 95 to get the
It's a meat shield for a character. I mean, like
Yeah.
the sorcerer had a nice I think it's anti-infantry 4+ for if you run devastating wounds or whatever for psychic
I think
powers.
it's
Like,
just the
it
fact
was
that
fine.
They were the cheapest of the 3 cult marine troops,
Yeah,
by a good margin as well.
we deserved it.
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
No, I do think like the codex is codex sorcerers. There's no two ways about it because the infantry themselves aren't particularly strong. You could say there's arguments to be made for like the brick of Terminators when you fully buff it up. You're spending 2 CP and stand beside Magnus and do this and do that to the other.
Crazy investment though, isn't
It
it?
can do a lot of work, but at the same time, everything has to line up for it to happen. And if you put it down the wrong part of the table at the wrong turn, it's stuck there. It's not going anywhere
Michael,
really.
I know you well enough to know that that's the exact type of strategy you love. I have 30,000 levers that all need to be pulled in the right direction before this turn. But by God, if I get it right,
Sometimes there's smoke coming out of my ears. It's great.
Yeah.
But I like it's a case of like I think I took a quick glance at some of the WTC stuff before the nerfs were brought in, and a lot of people, like, as good as like Terminators could be, everyone was playing sorcerers because realistically, like, that's where most of the power was coming out of the codex, was the sorcerers and their ability to do well. Some of them do torrent weapons, some of them have like sustained hits 3, some of them give like invuns. There's a good selection of stuff there. And on top of it, then you have the likes of Magnus, who is fantastic, really, really good. Now, everything in the codex started getting more expensive, pretty much bar nothing.
Did you have any cuts?
No. Maybe there was like a
probably went
Forge Fiend or something might have gone down, or not a Forge Fiend, a Mauler Fiend? Mauler Fiend? Yeah, Mauler Fiend, that one. Yeah, one of those. So yeah, pretty much anything that you'd want to bring, being realistic, anything you want to bring went up. So sorcerers on average went up between 10 and 20 points. Rubrics would have gone up 10. Scarabs, I think, went up something like 10 for the squad as well. Magnus went up 30. Vortex Beasts went up 20. So like you can still get powerful stuff, but you can get a lot less of it. And it's kind of you talk about nerfs and buffs and nerfs. You'd say, oh, we know points cost decreases or increases. That'll probably you've less stuff to work with, so that might fix it or it might bring it back in line. But we got kind of double nerfed simply because of the change to devastating wounds, because that was doing a lot of work for the codex as well. It's completely understandable why they nerfed devastating wounds. But it might be a lot for the codex to take. I can
Do you
see
think it
them.
kind of just double downs then? Because it sounds like your build was already somewhat restricted, and if your main damage output is also not taken away but vastly curtailed, then you got a points increase on top of it. I don't know.
Exactly.
It could. I think it could hurt your faction an awful lot, to be honest.
It could. To be deadly honest with you, outside of maybe Magnus and the Vortex Beasts, the change to devastating wounds would probably have done a lot to fix the sorcerers and the rubrics, simply because you don't have the same mortal wound output. like you'll still kill stuff, whether you'll get it into the right targets to kill him or whether the right targets will be presented to kill him. It depends on the game, but in terms of like straight up nerfs the faction, the kind of fact that it's layered, that there's a couple of things going on at the same time, it's going to be a lot. Like with them, I have no doubt we'll still have a certain amount of play that will probably have game into most things, but it's going to be tough.
Would you say it's like, to put it in perspective, especially for people who are watching, in terms of like a relative power scale to where the world leaders are right now, would you put them above or below or somewhere on the same level?
Ooh, it depends how lucky you get in your 6s of respawn Angron, I'll be deadly honest with you.
Isn't it always, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, in terms of overall factions, I'd argue probably mid-table. I don't think we're gone down to the gutters. I don't think they've done enough to like send the Codex into the Shadow Realm like it wasn't for most of 9th, but it's certainly going to be tough to try and compete with the big boys. Like there's the likes of say Orcs now or Tau, where there's a lot of shooting and a lot of tough stuff. Orcs,
do you not
where
think
there's just
though,
a lot of
with,
stuff.
with Orcs, like just like flamer bombs of rubrics will be able to like absolutely torch them?
I imagine if you really wanted to build into it, well, you're talking about strength 4 weapons as well too, but if you really wanted to build into it, you're talking about specifically building to counter Orcs. If they're in the top of the meta, yeah, fine, that makes sense. But as soon as you run into one Knights player, suddenly you're kind of like, it's you have to build a kind of a balance list.
That's
at the same time.
That's where the Vortex Beasts come in though, and they absolutely take the Knights off
and
the
hopefully,
table.
hopefully no fella has 3 Raiders and a lot of Scourges to just like Dark Lance you off the board. It'd be great.
That sounds like a skill issue.
Yeah, so I don't know. Look, I think there's no reason to be like the sky is falling, but they've certainly taken a hatchet to it. I would argue it's probably as heavily nerfed as what they've done to Eldar, and we comparatively would not have been as powerful as Eldar. So
no, I don't really think I heard people
what do you think? How do you think this is like you against your say natural predators in the meta? Like, do you think it's kind of led to them being weak enough for you to maybe still kind of etch up a little bit, or do you think everybody else that was below you's gotten so much stronger now?
It's a great question, actually. Like, what even is your natural predator in the meta?
To be honest with you, I don't know if there was a whole pile. Eldar would have been probably the top of the list, but anything that's faster than you.
Ignored
anything that's faster, anything that's faster than anything that's good at killing 2 wound models is basically kind of a natural predator at Thousand Suns, because what have you afterwards except for sorcerers with maybe 4 or 5 wounds and rubrics. So you'd have 5 up invuln, but how many 5s are you going to really roll in the squad of 5 to 10 men? Unless you're Jay.
I mean, look, yeah. I would argue, maybe controversially, that because of the changes, world leaders are now a natural predator to Thousand Suns. Because we're so much cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
You've become more expensive. It's probably a net change of 2 units in my favor. Then I'm less scared of you. I'm way faster than you.
It's probably in a change of 4 units, because I'd have lost either 1 or 2 units and you'll have gained up to 2 units. So it's technically 4.
I've really only gained 1 unit. And if you've lost 2, then I guess it's a net of 3, which is very significant for what is almost always a trade game, I feel, in that matchup. So if you've got 3 more units to play around with on one side, and then you've got a Primarch resurrecting.
Oh yeah, as soon as you like put an effort into killing like a 450 point unit and it comes back behind you or something, what do? It's you're not playing. I suppose before in 9th, the reason when the Codex got a bit poor, the reason why it still competed as opposed to competed well, was because you could play a cult where you could teleport stuff. And being a bad army that's mobile is much better than being a good army that's slow.
Yeah.
And at the moment, like your world leaders are fast and
good,
pretty good. Like at the moment, Death Guard not so fast, but there's lots of them. And when you start dropping them in deep strike and stuff, the speed doesn't really matter. You're not going to get away from them the second turn. You might the first turn if they fail in line discharge, but the second turn they're on you. So if you're both slow and iffy, then you're in trouble. It could. So I want to take it out and try it a couple of times. I would be skeptical. I do think maybe they missed the mark a little bit, because yes, devastating wounds were probably a problem. Maybe things were cost too little, but either would have fixed it. And the one thing that they didn't change, that everyone was giving out about, was Twist of Fate to get rid of armor saves, which probably would have been the better thing to go after first, simply because that is a kind of a weirdly strong ability at times, and more times it does nothing.
It can be. I don't know, it's a bit of a weird one, I think, because it's a significant investment to use it, and you're typically using it on a unit that you're like, oh, I really need to kill this unit like bad. I know you can have like tanks and stuff, right? But like, I'm just thinking of my army, like I wouldn't really care that much who you'd
When
put it on.
you say that, but like Twist of Fate. So there's an argument to be made for, are AP1 bolters with Twist of Fate better than AP2 bolters with no Twist of Fate? Because if you've AP2, you're generally able to kill things. Like you cover, so you take most things to a 4-up. Your 4-up is what you're. So you have a 50-50 chance once you get a wound through of killing something. Twist of Fate makes AP1 bolters really strong, like really, really strong. It takes it way down the deep end, where it's not like a unit that does work. It's a unit that's crazy, and if you can stack up these things to like really push on, like to get the wounds through, and you've no save. Suddenly, like how do you balance that for? Like you could make the Rubik squad 500 points and it'd pick up whatever unit you pointed at, just as long as you twist a fate, as opposed to the player you're playing having a 50-50 chance of making a save. It's a weird one. It's very powerful in certain situations, and in anything that doesn't have an invuln, you might as well just forget it. It's like you see people are trying to encourage people to take land raiders by dropping by 25 points nearly across the board. Like twist a fate, it dies.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're a far cry away from the Land Raider hitting the meta again, unfortunately. It's so weird. It's like
they really want it. Would it be a patch? Would it be a
hard.
patch without GW dropping the price of a Land Raider? I mean,
They always do something with it. I've seen them increase the points on a Land Raider in patches before. It's so far away from being a viable unit. At like a truly competitive level, I think you can like mid-table boogie with it, and I think it has a place in deck guard lists.
Yeah.
But like Thousand Suns, like, okay, why am I bringing this?
you're never. It's too expensive. You're never going to bring it.
I'm like, okay, I'm running faster than the Land Raider, so
yeah,
what's the point? Oh boy, an assault ramp! How exciting! I already moved like 22 inches, so I don't care.
Hey, but don't forget, it's OC6. It'll sit in that point and own it. Maybe.
Sure, I guess maybe until 10 jackals walk up. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm kind of with you on the side of the fence of like maybe T-Sons have been hit a little bit too harshly, but I also think it wouldn't take a whole lot to maybe course correct them back into a good and stable area, and I think they'll still be fine, especially in like hands like yours where it's like a skill player who's able to like do quite well with the tools at hand. And I think the tools that you have are still interesting, still competitive tools, but yeah, it might have been a bit much. Like, how much is Magnus now?
He's I think he's gone to 430. He might be 450. I'll have to have a look.
Yeah, so he's the most expensive, and I don't know if he necessarily should be.
With devastating wounds
in the corner here with a 300-point Primarch. I'm like,
we'll get to. Don't worry, Jay.
We'll come
get to
you.
that.
Don't worry. We'll come to you. I do not mind that GW have taken a hatchet to the codex. That's fine. That's grand. I'm very happy that they've taken the time to go and try and balance it and say this was a problem, which it probably was, to be deadly fair, that this is a problem and we're going to try and fix it. As long as if it doesn't work in January or December or whenever the next patch is, they come back and say, oh yeah, like that was a bit too much, maybe we'll go back the other way a small bit. That I'm perfectly happy with it. But if they walk away from it now and say, oh, it's not like under 45%, it's like players are playing it, but it's like it's got a couple of really bad matchups and there's no fix for it. As long as they don't leave it in a state where you just like come up to a table and say, oh well, I can't play into Worldy just because as soon as you get into my lines it's done.
Yeah.
As long as there's some solution to it and they're happy to try and like fix it some way, then yeah, it's grand. I'm happy to take it. It'll be look, it's not the end of the world. It's it'll be fun. It'll be fun to try and get play out of it because it's going to be like you said. It's a different game now with all the changes everywhere else as well too. You'll have to find your feet again because the stuff that was very strong before, like against like actually a perfect example of why this is swings and roundabouts is like Custodes. What's it, 4-up against mortal wounds or something?
Yeah, it just doesn't work now.
It just doesn't work anymore because devastating wounds are mortal wounds. I'd imagine that's going to be hot patched at some point, but
but
for the
until
moment,
it is, by God, the Berserker Glaive Mo is going to run an absolute train on some Custodian.
Once you hit damage 4, it just doesn't matter. He's going to have.
Oh, you don't have an armor safe, an invul safe. You don't have a Film of Pain. I'm sorry, brother. Goodbye. Trajan is going to be slammed every time I see him. I'm like, oh, you can't buy first for free here anymore. Oh, I'm so sad for you.
You're very
Anyway.
cruel when you get going, aren't you? Sometimes.
I have almost no sympathy in my bones for Custode players. They had their time in the sun, and I guess it's a pretty good pivot. Now that their time in the sun is gone, we better talk about the stinky plague Hulk in the room, the deck guard.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes, everyone.
significant changes, right, Jay? Significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I watched your review of the data slate the other night there as well, or I didn't watch it when it was live. But I have to kind of agree. It could be teetering on the point of maybe going a little bit too far. I feel like one of these things could have been a nice start to see how Death Guard do. I like, and I kind of feel sad that I'm like, other lower tier factions didn't get quite as big of a buff as us. Like, Admech, I don't think I really saw
They
them
didn't
getting
have as
anywhere near
loud of a fan
Votan.
base, realistically.
But I think it was like you had the Death Guard who were like a starter faction of 8 all crying themselves to sleep over the last couple of months. So I think GW overcorrected here a little bit, because I think there was the most vocal outcry and like, listen, I'm going to reap the benefits for the next few months for sure. But I think if it was just the points changes, I think we still could have given a really good run for our money, and then or the data slate the detachment changes. If it was either of those, I still think we could have given some factions a real good run for money. But I think with those two combined with how so many other things have changed, I think that's actually what's kind of tipped us up to the kind of top mark. But yeah, it's kind of a huge change for the army, really. And I don't think it necessarily changes how we play. I might see some kind of more niche things come out to play. I think some things that maybe would have been laughable are now starting to be taken into consideration. But like that icon bearer that everyone laughed at whenever we got the separate data sheet for, he's like 40 points now, or 45 points, and he once per game extends your contagion aura out to 12 inches, and you're just like, okay, cool, I just have a 5-man Plague Marine squad, either turn up from strat reserves to like get one unit within that, and then that's them -1 weapon skill the next time that they go to shoot, or that's them -1 save while the rest of everyone else shoots at it. Suddenly you're like, this laughable unit, we're all like vibing with it now. We're like, oh, how am I going to get this little banner guy into my army,
Oh, how? With all the, difficult point decisions that you have, considering like you've got a 40-point character in your army is ridiculous. I mean, cheapest character is 80. It's Khorne, but it's 80.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about Khorne.
Yeah, well, look, Khorne's an issue in himself. Yeah.
But no, I really do think that that's one of the big things for us, is that it's actually like even the Hellbrute. I did think the Hellbrute was a cool pick. Even back when it was just the -1 toughness, but now giving multiple units -1 weapon skill at range if you have multiple Hellbrutes, I think that could actually really help us against some of our natural predators that are still out there. And now with the rise of Tau, it'll be really, really important for us to be able to do something like that now.
That's a good point,
and then being also able to stack a -1 to hit with our strats as well. Like, I think that's where the durability is coming in. I would have loved a blanket feel no pain or -1 damage, but I think this has actually made it that we have to think a little bit more about how we get the durability rather than just getting it from a feel no pain. So it wasn't what we wanted, but I think it's still a really, really great change.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, making world leaders hit on 5s in combat is
Amazing.
a vibe.
It's kind of unusual though, because you have a couple of abilities to choose from. You got the -1 weapon or ballistic skill, you have the armor one, and you have the is it leadership or
and OC.
Oh, and OC.
And you still reduce everyone's toughness.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not the most powerful one, but it's definitely got use. Even like, that's saying something that like -1 OC. Does that go to OC 0, or does that go to
minimum 1?
OC 0.
Can't go below 1. Okay, because that'd be really funky if you go to OC 0. Just can't own a point when Death Guard are around to be pretty much.
I mean, I think there's like a Horde Death Guard build that just uses that one though, and it's just like, I'm gonna sit on every point ever. You're always gonna be -1 OC, and then it's just like, cool. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Like, have you any banner as well? That banner that I was talking about, he also increases the OC by 1 as well. So.
Oh really?
you just own points basically.
Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure he also gives them a bonus OC as well.
Have you any other like leadership debuff to stack, or is it?
Yeah, and that's again because there's something else there that we can do, like the Noxious Blightbringer. He can minus you by 2, I believe. So that's -3 to your leadership there. Within contagion range, which again, we used to have all these other rules that did stuff from the contagion range, like the Chaos Lords and the likes of that. Now that we're actually trying to get things into contagion range, I think some of these other rules are actually going to start cropping up. He can do like mortal wounds when you're in contagion range. What else
Contagion
is there?
range is gonna suck, basically.
Oh man,
Yeah,
but like
yeah.
it's mad
Yeah.
what they have to do with the codex, because now you're starting, like, you're in a situation now where you can start layering stuff, whereas before all your buffs seem to be like, this wants to go over here and this wants to go over here and
Yeah.
never interact at
Yeah.
all. You know, it's after change. It's like a complete. It's not even a massive change. It's just like one additional layer of rules, and suddenly things start to make sense.
I suppose it's when
Yeah.
there's like an extra layer of rules that actually interacts with so many fundamental parts of the army, and kind of almost forces the army to play the way that it probably should have played from the get-go. You know, it's when things start making sense like that. But I suppose, like, in terms of archetypes, in terms of builds, like, how are you viewing this, Jay? Because I know you brought a nasty fight first Plague Marine combat build against me, which I'm thinking, considering that build saved what, like 200 to 300 points.
That one was 200. That one was 270.
That's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Like, that's in my mind, like, that's like what, another Plague Marine squad full of characters, and then some.
Yeah, so that list, because I had it saved obviously in the app, I already had changed that Land Raider over to a Rhino and put in Beasts of Nurgle and Nurglings, so it isn't the Raider and 2 Rhinos.
Yeah.
It was 3 Rhinos, but yeah, I think the thing with that though is that I'd actually just squeeze in either the little drones and hauler now. They're 100 points each now. They both went down to 100, and just like that, they're nippy enough to try to get out there and, you know, get that contagion range as well. So I think they actually have a lot of play. So I would nearly even drop some of those poxwalkers to get at least one of each of them, and maybe a second one of them, just to be able to like scoot around, throw themselves out there on the midboard to try to get that contagion range earlier on. So I think that would be one thing. But yeah, I think that's actually a big change for us, is that we're trying to get more like weirdly little nippy things jumping around the place to get that contagion, or you're going for the Hellbrutes to try to buff your shooting. But yeah, that fight first blah, but like I was moving away from that because I knew it wasn't going to do well at tournaments, but now I'm like, yeah, that little kind of Plague Marine core backed up by the Plague Burst Crawlers, I think, and now that's another thing I'll make a little change, just kind of get Plague Burst Crawlers in there. Yeah, it's just finally getting them into range, and even that -1 to save with the -1 mortar. Suddenly now that's effectively -2, you know. So yeah, it's going to be pretty good to be able to get that.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's disgusting. I mean, from a world leader's perspective,
notably not disgustingly resilient though.
Notably not. That's still my job, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, from my perspective, if you're looking at equal skill in terms of like the two generals, I can't see how world leaders come out of that matchup with a win. I really don't,
especially with my list, with the way my list was operating. I'd say if you ran into like a more shooty orientated Death Guard, which I do think a lot of people are running, the triple Plague Burst Crawlers, the Death Shroud with the Lord of Virulences and Mortarion running around, I definitely think that you would probably have a good enough time with that list, because there's not enough melee, and like, even sure you get into melee and you're not doing a lot of damage, I'm not doing damage to you, so I think you would be fine there. But if anybody starts taking over to Foul Blight spam, you're wrecked.
Yeah.
You know,
like fight first across the board, combined with me hitting on 5s a lot of the time, or 4s minimum.
Yeah.
Oh my god, you know, it's curtains. There's no way I'm coming around that. Unless Angron literally respawns in every single turn, then maybe. But yeah, I think world leader players are like pretty much exclusively sleeping on this army right now in terms of like what we need to watch out for. Everyone's talking of like, oh, we're gonna slam custodes, we're gonna slam knights, and it's like, yeah, we definitely are. We're definitely gonna slam those armies. But like, I think competent deck guard players are going to eat good when they're going to world leaders, you know. And I think, like, I really don't think it's an exaggeration to say that deck guard players could challenge a podium at like GTs and maybe even majors.
Yeah, it'll matter about like because I still think Eldari pick us up. You know, the change to Devastating Wounds means that our Terminator bricks could still do well with them. You know, the huge 2d6 Devastating Wounds from Wraith Knight is only still going to kill one Blightlord Terminator, you know, that kind of way. So that was a nice change for us. But I still think that them, and now if Tau's in the rise, I think they'll be another real natural predator of ours. You know, I still not super fast because they're not infantry, but if anybody's taking into melee and, you know, tries to get close to Death Guard, you know, that's really where the magic happens with us now, like, because we can just layer up buffs and make it just harder for you to do, either harder to survive at the -1 save or harder to just hit us at all. with the -1 weapon skill and ballistic skill. Like,
Out of interest, like you've obviously you've probably built a few Death Guard. This is the points came out. How many actual units would you get into an army in general? Like, is it like, have you increased by 3 or 2 or 5 or?
It seemed to be only about 2, maybe. Now, let's say like somebody else who wasn't running cultists or poxwalkers, because I was really, really fond of them. If you were only adding them in now that you've got your 200 points or so, that's like 4 or 5 units. But if you're like me, I'm now adding in more demon engines now because I have the points rocking around. So it's not as huge of a change for me. I'm only on the like maybe 2, maybe max 3 units. Because even like my Terminator lists, I think the Terminators all went down significantly, about like 15, 20 points each.
I was going to say, your Terminators are like terrifying now, right?
Yeah, I think they're like the most durable Terminators out there per point, easily, especially with the T6. Again, not huge damage. Like the Death Shroud can really spike up if you attach a good character with them, like the Lord of Contagion. The re-rolling hits, suddenly they can like. I picked up
Death Shroud spiking up.
Everything's lethal.
Character. I'm like, oh yeah, I know how that one goes.
Oh yeah.
It's fine. Karen will still settle the
I
bill
suppose.
with them.
Yeah, I suppose the reason I was asking is simply because, like if you're like you say in the melee armies or anything else, because the name of the game is trading, isn't it? And if you have these extra pieces to trade, then suddenly your army's a lot more viable. Whereas if you're down a unit or two,
this is my logic. It's like the way in my brain how it works is like a lot of the game right now, and I suppose historically, has kind of focused around like trading in the mid-board and playing around the objectives and doing bits and pieces in the middle of the board, especially now in 10th. They're like, get the fuck out of your deployment zone and boogie in the middle. And I'm like, I don't know any army that boogies in the middle better than Death Guard right now, because they're just like, you can't come at us, because like if you do, bad things happen. And we have loads of little, like the Blight Haulers, the Hellbrutes even can do it, where they're just like, I'm in the middle, I'm doing cleanse. Or there's like one guy in a corner being like, I'm investigating the signal and I'm only 40 points, and it's just stuff like that where it's like, okay, cool, I guess this is interesting. And then you got I suppose the big one in the room, Mortarion at 325.
325.
How are you feeling about 325 Mortarion?
Like, it's amazing. Like, he's so durable for his points now, and like, I mean, he'll still very much so get picked up quite easily. If you misplace him or you don't roll well enough on the 5-up Feel No Pains, he is still going to get picked up relatively quickly. He still doesn't have amazing output, but now that final, he had the 3 kind of Primarch abilities that he can proc at the start of the battle round, and there was always pretty much the cover one you did for turn 1, and then the reroll wound rolls of 1 in turn 2 onwards, basically. But now there's the one where you can extend everybody within 6 inches of him. You can extend their contagion range out to 12. So suddenly you don't even need that
12.
little icon bearer anymore. You just need him close enough to several units at the front to extend their contagion range out to 12.
And he can
plus, I misspoke. It's adding 3 to it, but turn 3 onwards after putting it to 12. Excuse me. So turn 1 it'll be 6, turn 2 it'll be 9, and then turn 3 onwards it'll be 12.
That's
but
nasty.
Still,
in theory, that gives you like an 18-inch bubble, doesn't it? Because it's him plus, well, not quite 6, but say him plus his base plus 6 your unit, which you could actually technically string out as well too, and then plus another 3 on the end of that, so you can go way out if you want.
You can, like, with him, you can make the whole board contagion range essentially.
Effectively, you can really, and it's nice to see that kind of crop back in, because like I said, there was loads of stuff that you could do with contagion range before, but it was all awful and nobody was really playing around it. Now it'll be great to see people kind of maybe trying to tech around that a little bit more, and one of the enhancements that you can give to characters is adding 3 inches onto that as well, so then you can effectively make that like 15 inches then on one unit, off that character anyway. I think a lot of people don't appreciate how big a 15-inch bubble around a unit is. It's like 15 inches, not just 15 inches, straight in front of you. It's 15 inches all around you.
Yeah,
it's a 30-inch bubble, like
30-inch diameter is you're looking at half
table
the
60.
Of the board.
Yeah, the table is 60, so you're pretty much most of the board.
That's why when people are like, "Oh, Overwatch is only within 24 inches," I'm like, that is so much of the board, so much.
And I think the nerfs that we saw in the Balance Dataslate as well just didn't really hit us at all. The changing to CP manipulation, we couldn't do that anyway, so we don't really care. We were playing with our actual CP count before anybody else was. Now that everybody has to be a little bit more mindful of their CP, we were already doing that.
I mean, to be fair, same with us though. You know, that hasn't changed for either of us two.
And then
you just had your other funny dice.
The funny dice, yeah.
And
then the change
you just cheat anyway, Mike, so it's fine.
All the time.
I've got 12 CP by. It's like, it's only turn 1, Michael. How can
12 CP by. You see that unit over there? That doesn't exist anymore. It's great.
Typical.
It's going to be a brave new world, isn't it? Because like Death Guard, like we've seen a couple of instances, like famously over in some Element Games tournament, wasn't it, over in the UK a couple of weeks ago? Someone took up the second, and that was with the old slate, and now you're out to getting just enough, maybe too much. I don't know. It would be finding out. It's going to be.
I'm really excited to see what you do, Jay, and what like Don does as well, because like it's gonna be some interesting vibes, I think.
I'm glad my old list is kind of good again, because I like I was saying to you, that's how I wanted to play Death Guard, and I was like, oh, fine, I'll go with the triple Plague Burst Crawlers and Lord of Virulence and all that kind of stuff to try it out for a little while, and I wasn't enjoying playing it because it's not how I wanted to play. So I'm glad my like Rhino Rush Plague Marines are back, and now I have to actually paint 30 plus Plague Marines though. So I'm like, oh god.
I'm gonna buy you a big bath of like Agrax Earthshade for Christmas. You can just like throw them all in and bring them all out.
We gotta upskill. We gotta go with the oil bath. Yeah. But obviously you're pretty stoked to play Death Guard, and I suppose to kind of like I may maybe start to kind of close this out. Like obviously you both play other armies as well, right? Jay, you're kind of soaring to the Dark City with Dark Eldar, and Mike, you're a big fan of the old Blood Angels. And I suppose with how the Thousand Suns have changed, and with how the Death Guard have changed relative to how those other two armies have changed, like I think maybe I'm guessing here, but Jay, I'm guessing that you want to play Death Guard more, and Mike, I'm guessing that you actually want to play Blood Angels more than Thousand Suns right now.
I'm a dirty meta chaser.
But I mean, they're way more. I don't know. Like Blood Angels seem pretty cool, and Dark Eldar, to me, don't seem that interesting right now, I would say.
I think the only thing, it was great, there was nice point cuts pretty much across the board with Drukhari. It was nice, but then the Ravager went up like 20 points per model, and I'm like, absolutely fair that it did. It shouldn't have been as cheap as it was. It still dies to a stiff breeze, so I'll contest that maybe it shouldn't have gone up quite as much, but I think that actually just leveled us out. But unfortunately, everybody else got better around us. So I think you'll actually see Drukhari really slipping down. Like, that's not to say that, people out there won't be able to play, really, really great games with them. I think you'll just really have to have your thinking cap on and play perfectly with Drukhari to do well. I think just a lot of the other kind of crappy armies that we were kind of making fun of and like pushing around in the school ground, have gotten much better than us now. We're like, oh, crap.
They've grown up. They've hit puberty. Things are bad.
The Dark Elder who are bullying for Death Guard are suddenly shitting bullets, basically, seeing them outnumbered by Plague Marine bodies.
I still always really enjoy playing with my Drukhari though. I think I'm a bit of a love-hate with them at the moment because it's all shooting, and I really love my melee. So as soon as they fix the melee, even if it's crap, I'll still probably bounce back to Dark Eldar every now and then.
They really
guess, like we got Broadsword coming up in 4 weeks.
Just under 4 weeks, yeah.
Just under 4 weeks. Dark Elder or Death Guard, Jay? What do you think?
Death Guard. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be any kind of. I know I played them at the Drukhari at that 500 point RTT, but like any major tournament that we go to, that's 2,000 points. I'm going to be playing Death Guard for 10th. I said that before we got into 10th, and I soldiered on there for a while.
Okay, here it is now. I
don't see any proof.
Before. It was cool.
Well,
you kicked my door in like literally first week of 10th with Death Guard, so.
But I did this with Drukhari in 9th and 8th. Yeah. I played them exclusively at tournaments, and now I'll do the same for Death Guard. I'll give them their little day in the sun so they can dry out.
Cool. But I suppose it's great. It's great because like you can see it, but like from the last time to now is like you're excited to play the army. Like the Data State has achieved that, which is that's all you want. If you're excited to play it, you can see a way to play it. That's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, makes sense.
Personally, I'm going to be a dirty meta chaser. I'm taking Blood Angels to Broadsword.
Yeah, I was going to say this.
Hate me as much as you want.
Yeah, I don't hate you at all. I freaking, like, if I didn't play World Eaters, I'd play Blood Angels. Those guys are hot. And right now, they're red hot, right? Like Deck Company, in this day and age, Vanguard veterans, 5 of them costing the same as a Berserker squad.
105 points. Yeah, but well, I suppose we've AP1 damage 1. I suppose it's not too bad. But
I hope you're ready to hit on 5.
They're AP2, no? The Vanguard
AP1. If you attach characters,
sure
they can go to AP2 with certain characters, but they're AP1 by default.
I mean, I'm just looking at it, right, and I'm like, these guys have the same number of attacks as a Khorne Berserker at the same strength and a better AP, and they are the same points, and they have jump packs.
Absolutely. Here we go, boys.
Hang on a minute. This isn't quite correct.
Start your engines.
And Deck Company are foul at their, and all the name characters, which are all kind of have their place. Like Taito the Lost is going to crop up.
He's pretty spicy. I will look. My favorite change from the whole Blood Angels thing for this is the fact that I can now put 10 Sanguinary Guard, Dante, Sanguinor, block of 5 Assault Terminators, and my choice of either a Chaplain, a Company Captain, or a Librarian in Terminator Armor to Deep Strike at the same time as I rapid ingressing them on one at a time around the board. That's my favorite change so far, because before it was slightly over, so I had to draw a line somewhere. But
I think that's a lot of people are not necessarily jumping to that straight away, because I'm like, you can actually do the whole weird Land Raider out of reserve trick with a full squad of Berserkers now, and an attached character, as far as I'm aware. Or maybe not an attached character, but you can definitely do a full squad of Berserkers where they come out of the assault ramp after it arrives. And like you can do that. Like the Lord of Skulls for us is within strategic reserve limit now. Like you can put loads of Blood Angels in reserve. The Sanguinor is filthy at his new points level.
So good.
He is like, I would say he's an auto take for Blood Angel players. The disruption he can do is crazy.
He was an auto take before he got a points drop, and now he's just like, oh, we could take 2 if we can, but it's yeah. So, I know I'm super excited for him. They have probably with the change just about enough bodies that they can get to a shooting army and maybe start chopping it, or it might have enough to trade on points just to kind of push up on points and make you come to them. They definitely took it's definitely a big improvement. Their army rule is shite. Or not their army, the detachment rule is shite.
Easy now, Michael. Easy now. There's nothing wrong with +1 strength and attack in the charge, okay? It worked for me for literally 3 editions of the game, right? It'll work for you for now.
Okay. Come back to me in 6 months.
You're actually going to play Gladiator, or you're going to play the Blood Angels, you're not going to play Red Ultramarines?
Yeah, I think so. I think.
You're going to play Sons of Sanguinius.
I think Red Ultramarines is a bit of a cop out. As much fun as Advance and Charges. I think.
I mean, it's definitely a cop out.
It's way more powerful.
It's way more powerful, but it's a complete cop out. It's absolutely. I'm playing World Eaters, but I'm using the rules from Chaos Space Marines. Okay.
I'm looking forward to giving it a go, because, like I said there earlier, the tournament, the RTT that we went to in Cork there a number of months back, that my 1500 point list from the changes dropped by, it wasn't quite 300 to be fair, it was 290 points, and that's a significant drop for just a list that wants to run at you. It's fantastic. It's an extra unit or two.
Viable now, do you think, either of you? No,
I think it's going the right way. I think definitely I think the points were reduced on the right things for that sake. Things that were purely melee did see that bit of a drop, but I don't know. It's still Overwatch.
Players gain more points than any combat army. Same with Votann.
Yeah.
That ballistic skill 4. God, you need to have your handhelds, otherwise you just can't hack it. Apparently.
Well, not now that you give out judgment tokens to 4 units at the start of the game.
This is my problem with the gunline designed armies is we've made you hit on 4, so you have to think about your target priority, and then they're in general kind of we don't want to do that. We want to just delete the things that we look at, because otherwise we lose, And then it's now we have what we have now, which is basically some Tau list gain nearly 400 points. That's crazy.
Criminal. It's absolutely criminal.
That's really, really crazy. I don't know how much Votann dropped by. I don't think it was as much as Tau, but they got big changes to Judgment.
Yeah. The biggest problem with Votann is their units weren't most of them weren't good anyway. They were fair, maybe. Whereas Tau, some of the units are genuinely quite good if you have enough of them. They're genuinely quite good. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how it hits the meta.
Yeah.
For top pick for meta though, I'm still going to go with Necrons. I think they're going to come out on top.
Necrons. I think
think,
Eldar will
Necrons
still
are my shout.
dominate. Yeah. What about you, Jay?
Yeah, I have to agree with about Necrons because I think the only thing their reanimations got a little bit janked up by this. They can't do some of the things for free quite as much anymore, or something along those lines, I believe. So I think you might not have like the endless hordes, but I still think it's going to be ridiculous. Like every time I played against Necrons, I'm like, what is happening? Like, oh my gosh.
I suppose they benefit.
Why are you not dead?
From dev wounds changing as well, right? Because they're just like, I mean, Glaive Mo goes into them, and one warrior is like, I'm going to absorb 5 damage all by myself.
It's kind of a thing because if you like, the best way to frame it, I find, is like imagine block of 20 warriors with a feel no pain and an invuln. So you have 5 up and a 5 up, right?
Yeah.
T4 possibly they can't go to T5 anymore, but you can make them like harder.
Aren't they?
Yeah, like how many things in your army could go into a block of 20 and kill it? Angron doesn't have enough attacks.
Angron
don't have enough attacks. Berserkers have enough attacks.
Berserkers with Khorne and sustained up could do it.
Maybe, but you see, the problem is, like, you're also accounting for hitting on 3s. You're accounting for they have an armor save followed by a feel no pain, and there's 20 of them.
Yeah,
and
but
the multi damage doesn't make any difference.
You're hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s with 6s exploding. You're wounding on 3s, re-rolling 1s. They're saving on 5s. And then you've got Khorne coming in as well. You know, and the Feel No Pains, Khorne, and the Eviscerator lads will kind of cancel it out. So I think, but that's probably the only unit in my army that could get through a brick of them.
Yeah. Not every army.
That you're actually going to be you're focusing on trying to get rid of the warrior block when it's the destroyers in the back, it's the Doomsday Arcs in the back, it's the Canoptic Reanimator in the back that you actually want to get to, and melee army can't get to them.
Like floating around just wrecking your day.
They didn't fix that.
4 up, here we go, boys.
At least you can't take enhancements anymore, right?
No, you can't.
Are you sure?
You're joking. Yeah, the Transcendent can still take it. Yeah, there's nothing stopping it.
Yeah, he's not an epic hero. I think he can still take that.
I thought
feel up in points.
Slate they got taken out.
Not sure.
Hang on. I have it right here. Talk amongst yourselves.
No.
Maybe I'm just making this up.
What's new?
I think I am just making that up. I think
I'm pretty sure everyone thought that was going to happen, but it didn't.
Twice now. There's 2 different data states we thought it was going to get taken out, but they actually buffed it at one point. I'm pretty sure,
well,
which is funny. Yeah, but I do think because it's enough of a meat shield that not many armies actually have the firepower in one go to get through it. It's not that you can't, but it's certainly going to be more difficult. And they're not going to, like, you touch them in melee, they stop being effective, but you're not killing them and they're not killing you. They're doing everything else. They've got stuff shooting at you into combat. I do think it's going to be between them and Tau, but I'm still going to say Necrons is probably going to be where it's going to end up for a while anyway.
Only because I don't think Tau will have enough to like actually pick up the bricks of warriors and take the points. I think Tau will lose on primary against Necrons, and then you'll have that kind of like
trade off nearly. Yeah.
Do you draw good enough cards, or are you taking good enough fixed secondaries with Tau then? But I'd say them, and then still Eldari, obviously they're going to still stay.
We're just floating around, yeah. It'll be interesting.
Isn't it great though? Like they have to change it enough that who the hell knows? It's.
Oh, I think it's a very interesting meta, in my opinion. I think there's like so much variability now that we didn't have before. And I don't know, maybe in a month's time it'll seem less interesting when it kind of gets a little bit solved. But I think there's a lot of solving to do, and I don't necessarily know how fast it will get fixed. And I think there's a lot of things now that maybe like people are like, oh, this is viable now, so I'm actually going to take it out, and not like 40% of the player pool is going to be made up of Eldar players, which is good. Obviously, versatility is interesting and just makes for a more interesting discussion to have, I suppose, because like realistically in the last 3 or 4 weeks we've barely talked about 40k because it's just like this isn't interesting.
Eldar again.
Yeah,
So I guess now it's Eldari Custodes.
Eldari, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Did they manage? The one question I have is, did they actually manage to break Did's overall tournament victories in 9th in like the 18 months that they were dominant?
No.
In 3 months. Are you sure? They're pretty close.
They got close, but they didn't get there, and they didn't beat Nid's win percentage either, or Harlequins. I know people want to say that they did, but it's just not.
Are you sure? Because they're in the high 70s.
They weren't high 70s. No.
With the
no.
with the mirror taken out,
But,
I'm pretty sure they're up there.
Well, yeah, with the mirror taken out, yes, but with the mirror taken out for NIDS, it was like the same. Like, you got to keep the mirror in that sense. Because, like, the
Nids
top
weren't
tables
broken.
of NIDS for that part of ninth was still all just NID player v NID player on the top tables. So,
That's true.
yeah. They were definitely up there with NIDS. It just, I think it felt worse I'm not really sure why it felt worse, but it definitely felt worse.
So it was Elder.
Yeah,
Or
because
no,
it's
Yeah,
Elder,
it's-
and people
it's-
do
it's- they're
want
easy to hate.
Elder. Yeah.
Yeah.
They are easy to hate, to be fair. And I suppose NIDs are like so infrequently the meta. You know, it's almost a novelty when you're getting your tea kicked in by a.
What's
Harpy.
going on here?
Yeah.
Until you get your tea kicked in by the 10th Harpy list in a row, and you're like, actually, do you know what? This isn't that unique, and this isn't very original, and I'm not having a good time anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting. I think at least Deck Guard and World Leaders are poised to,
Yeah.
you know, really threaten the top tables. I think, like I said it already, I wouldn't be shocked to see World Leader players podiuming or winning GTs. I wouldn't be shocked if Deck Guard won majors. I would say I think they could.
Yeah.
I'm definitely expecting Deck Guard to be picking up a few GTs. Thousand Suns probably in the same realm as World Leaders. I feel.
You see, I suppose we weren't really winning before. The odd time we'd win one, and I think we place in top tens, but I think
Yeah.
it's enough of a kick in the teeth that we probably won't be doing it anymore. You would probably see us place, but I don't think we'd be winning much.
I mean, there will be faction abandonment as well because, you know, people are obsessed with winning. Will just say, I don't want
Yeah,
to play this
screw
anymore
this.
because I can't
Grass.
easily win with it, you know?
Yeah, the grass is greener somewhere else. We'll just go pat the least resistance and off we go.
Yeah,
Click.
flip the deck card.
Excuse
Oh, dear. Yeah. Hey, look. The Chaos Gods love a trier, as I always say. But yeah, I think,
Yeah,
look,
great game.
fairly clear that we're all feeling probably a lot more positive than the last time we did this video.
Yeah, I'm not
right?
clinging on for hope this time.
Yeah, you're not just like the golden ray of sunshine that the Deck Guard people were punching down on. Maybe
Yeah.
the comments will not be like, "Oh, Jay, you're full of crap this time."
Yeah, I was like, oh, like, I'm just trying to be good. I'm just trying to be positive here, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, listen. We hadn't seen the points then as well. I think that was a big thing about us talking
Yeah,
about
for
that
sure,
then
for sure.
was that we hadn't seen the points, and I think then when
I mean, Deck Guard were like aggressively overcosted in the index. You
Yeah.
know, even with their
Yeah.
crap rules, they were still ridiculously overcosted, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. But look, we're,
so I think that
we're-
was like where it really came down to it then, and I was like, okay, there is actually a lot of reason to be doing about
Yeah.
Death Guard actually, yeah.
Yeah, but
'cause I saw a lot of
I
great
still
combos.
maintain that like you did very admirably with them. You know, like in that period of time, like I beat you once, I think, in the games that we played, and you were doing really well with quite a unique deck guard list that wasn't just the triple plague, burst crawler, and Mortarion. So,
Yeah.
you know, that was cool, and I'm really excited to see what you do with the faction. And look, it's a number of weeks now before we have the Broadsword Major here in Ireland to test our metal and see. Well, I was going to see how the three cult factions actually shake out, but of course Michael is a dirty meta chaser and will not be representing the Thousand Suns.
We'll
Coward.
see.
Coward.
We'll see.
Coward. You'll never find out how the matchup is going to go because I just didn't play you when Thousand Suns were good.
Oh god.
So you never got the
you just
opportunity to
completely
kick me.
avoided me. Yeah, it's like
Yes.
I didn't
I
even
was
get to
busy
avenge
every
my
weekend.
kick. Yeah, busy somehow. And every weeknight too somehow. That was weird, wasn't it?
I was just lying on the couch, being like, "God, I'm so busy." And then Jay would be like, "Do you want to play a game?" I'd be like, "Yes." No problem, Jay. But yeah, it's good vibes, right? Good vibes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So I think on that, we'll probably close it out. Mike and Jay, it's been a pleasure as always, and I
Thanks
hope
for having
everyone's
us.
enjoyed watching this one. It's always fun to get something on the channel that isn't just World Leaders, and what better way than talking about Deck Guard and Thousand Suns. I'm really excited to see how we all do in Broadsword. But until the next one, folks, thanks so much for watching. You know, all the links are down below if you want to support us. Drop into the Discord to say hi and join the conversation as well. We're all in there, and we'll see you for the next one. So until then, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill, maim, burn.